Pam Bondi sees no evidence that he was working for a foreign state or working for a state, but we've been able to uncover tons of evidence that he was working for a foreign state. We cannot place faith in the system, right? We're not going to figure out what was going on because they decide to be forthcoming.
Candace Owens is still fired up about the ongoing Epstein cover-up, and rightly so, because Trump is still in on this thing and still trying to conceal evidence and still trying to conceal the Epstein files from the public. Candace gets into what costs this bears on the Republican Party and Trump, and where do we go from here? How can dissidents seek answers on this story, a child sex trafficking ring that was likely an intelligence operation from the get-go? Let's take a look at what she says about this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
The judge has just, shockingly, denied the release of the Jeffrey Epstein transcripts in Florida. A federal judge, ruled on Wednesday that they were going to deny a request to unseal the grand jury transcripts of a federal investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Now, we remember Trump had called for the release of the grand jury testimony, and I told you, yeah, don't bet on that. And he was calling for that in response to pressure from lawmakers, obviously pressure from us, pressure from the supporters. Like I said, we want to know who is in control. We want to know why these people still have power, and we're not letting up on this. Like, the time is now. We are at the gates, and we need to stay there. Anyways, the judge that made that ruling did say something quite curious. She said that the law does not permit her to grant the government's request, and that her hands were tied. I'm not sure what to make of that. Like I said, I believe that this was a bit of PR, pretending that they were going to ask for it. I'm wondering if the insinuation here that her hands are tied could be similar to Alexander Acosta back when he was the one who cut the 2007 deal with Epstein, which basically said, yeah, whatever, you molested children, but we're going to let you off and let you run the sheriff's office. He similarly indicated that his hands were tied because he was told that Epstein was an asset, that Epstein was above his pay grade, meaning he is a part of the state. He's CIA. And that makes sense in the context of William Barr, Donald Barr, his father, the early CIA, the OSS, being the one that pulled Epstein up through the system.
Yeah, she's right about this. To Candace's credit, she did think that this wouldn't bear fruit. And in a way, I think the administration honestly knew going into this that they weren't going to release the testimony to begin with. This is a court that has been adversarial against Trump, and to my understanding was actually involved in some of his indictments and charges in 2024 and maybe even 2023. But she's right. This was never going to bear fruit. And even if this would have been granted, we still would have waited for months. We still would have ended up in documents full of redactions likely. That's always what comes out of these, according to lawyers that have looked into this. And look, I think they've already decided they're covering this up, and they're just reacting in this way to try to throw breadcrumbs to the right-wing masses that clamored for this so long, and rightly so, because they were answered by people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. Hey, we're going to get to the bottom of this thing. Trump is going to get into the White House and offer an aura of transparency like you've never seen before. It's going to be the greatest transparency ever. I can't do the Trump, but you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, Candace is right on the money here. What we need is the wire transfers that Ron Wyden's talking about in Congress right now. I'm not a Democrat, but he's good on this issue. He was one of the only Democrats that has ever talked about this issue when Biden was in office. There's $1.5 billion in wire transfers from Epstein to prominent people. Those are unsealed. They could be those are sealed. They could be unsealed. No one's talking about it in the mainstream. No one talks about Epstein's intelligence connections like Candace has, like I have in my videos, etc. That's where we're at, and we're not going to get those answers.
All of that makes sense. I don't know why, but Pam Bondi sees no evidence that he was working for a foreign state or working for a state, but we've been able to uncover tons of evidence that he was working for a foreign state. And it's looking like they are trying to have us chasing our tail on this. I told you, we cannot place faith in the system, right? We're not going to figure out what was going on because they decide to be forthcoming. Like I said, the reason that it's a very small club at the tippity top is because there are very few people that are sadistic enough to harm children. and they protect each other, and they're willing to go through great lengths to do that. And so it's going to be incumbent upon us, the people, to come together with the facts, to do these series, to continue to create a quote unquote frenzied response. My frenzied fans, yeah, my fans get pretty frenzied on the topic of pedophilia, Brigitte. You're right. On the topic of grooming, all the things that we learned throughout your series of what the people around you were up to, we can get more than frenzied, actually.
Yeah, hey, I'm with her on this. This is something that deserves uproar, concerted uproar. It was a child sex trafficking ring involving some of the most prominent people in the world that he had connections to. And yet, notice that they never talk about this. The people in power, the DOJ and the FBI, even in the Trump administration, in the Biden administration, it was the same. They never even talk about the connections that Epstein is known to have with intelligence operatives and other people involved in various state activities. They don't even address it, even to deny it or downplay it or say, hey, that's just part of some kooky conspiracy theory. They just start with the whole thing is some kooky conspiracy theory. Trump himself now calling it a Democratic hoax. I'm a little bit surprised they went with that for so many days in a row. It's clear that his base is not buying this because the Democrats did not bring this up. They brought Russiagate up against him. That's what they used and led with for 2 to 3 years. So yeah, we're not going to get this information. She's right. They're not going to be forthcoming about it. It's going to take something like a whistleblower or some kind of information being divulged that they didn't plan to divulge to get to the bottom of this thing. There's plenty of angles. I talked about the wire transfers. There's information from Ghislaine Maxwell's trial that was withheld from the public. That could be unsealed. There's search warrant documentation and search warrant results that transpired from his 2019 arrest that has never been unveiled to the masses. And there's things related to him serving as an informant, not only after the Towers financial issue where he participated in one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in U.S. history and fed the feds information about it. He cooperated with the feds on it. He also served as something of an informant after his first arrest and plea deal, the sweetheart deal she referred to there. In the documents, it says that he will divulge as part of this plea deal information regarding his illegal activities.
So if you think throwing in that that's a scary thing, calling us frenzied, oh, I don't want to be considered frenzied. I want to be considered polite. I look the other way when someone's grooming a child. Get out of my face. Literally, get out of my face. I'm not the one to mush. You can mush your husband, but don't mush me, okay? Really sick of this. I'm getting really sick of Bridget Macron and the BS here that has just been flying everywhere from France to America.
Well, I haven't studied that story too closely, but if it's anything like the Epstein cover-up, hey, I'm with her on that too. But yeah, you know, the cover-up is absurd, and the frenzied attitude that this administration has toward this is palpable. You can see they're reacting in ways that they don't react to when they take criticism on other things like Signalgate or bombing Yemen or the war in Iran. They're trying to produce things to satiate the enraged masses, and the masses are right to be enraged over this child sex trafficking operation and over this criminal who likely had ties to Mossad, and by revealing that would embarrass the U.S. Well, guess what? I want the U.S. government to come forward with that and embarrass Israel if that's what happened. So we can see why they have no incentive to do it, wanting to keep their ties to Israel close, but that's where we're at.
Protecting what I view to be a sadistic syndicate. I said what I meant. And I want to be also clear, I think you're a man. I think it's beyond obvious that we're born a man. You may want to split hairs about, well, I'm really a woman. I feel on the inside, I'm a woman. That insulting wig that you're wearing, it's ridiculous. It's like you're laughing at us, okay?
I think she transitions back to the other story. I'm not getting into this. I don't know the background, but it is funny that this is kind of intermingled in this story.
You can try to split hairs in how you feel and how you've always felt like a woman. What I'm saying is that you were born a man and you will die a man. That's the point I'm making. So give us a sample. I'll send my doctors to take your blood. Figure it out real quick, however you want to go about this. Hey, how about just giving us some pictures again of you growing up, raising your children? That would be fine. For whatever reason, Tafone, by the way, on Father's Day, Tafone being her oldest daughter that normally defends her, but has been suspiciously quiet since her office got raided. I'll tell you about that another time. Tefone on Father's Day posted photos of her growing up with her dad. Why is nobody just posting those photos of the First Lady raising her kids? Why doesn't Tefone ever post photos when it comes to the person that is sitting in the Élysée Palace?
So guys, what's being covered up more, the Epstein story or Bridget Macron's background? Let me know in the comments below. Bridget Macron's upbringing or the Epstein story? What's the bigger cover up, guys? Let me know down below.
Her quote unquote mom. Wouldn't that be such an easy way to spell the rumors? You can post pictures of your dad, but you can't post pictures of your mom? It's not making sense. The math is not mathing, Brigitte. The math is not mathing. Like I said, we'll get to the bottom of it, right? That is what Discovery is for. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. You're probably hoping, oh, this will go away, and at least we'll say we sued her. We'll say we went after her. She'll probably file for this to get dismissed. I'd like to make it to Discovery. I think that we owe that to the world. Anyways, you guys, this is just, by the way, breaking in the Wall Street Journal. Well, going back to our points that we were making here about Epstein and what's been happening. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the Justice Department told Trump back in May that his name is among many that are in the Epstein files. Now, this is interesting because we've been kind of remarking on the strange 180 that's been happening. Like, they were very clear in communicating, and I'm talking about Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, the files, the photos. I think that was in February. And then now it's just like Operation Gaslight. Like, who cares about these files? And if it is true that in May of 2025, they went to Trump and said, you're mentioned in this, that could be a reason why. And to be clear, Trump has come back and said, well, tons of names, and I'm paraphrasing here, are mentioned in the files, right? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't accuse me of doing anything wrong necessarily. And that
the files that don't exist, the files that we couldn't get, the files that need to be removed from the American masses. I will say this about this. It's not particularly surprising that Trump's name would appear in the Epstein files. He, had a long-term friendship with Epstein, especially in the 90s, going all the way up to 2004. The friendship breaking off at that point from my research because the two vied and competed in a very bitter dispute over a particular property that was a former property of Les Wexner that the two wanted to buy, both of them. They got into a bidding war. Trump eventually won, and they didn't have a friendship after that. It seemed to be severed, and there seems to be little evidence that they had any real relationship after that. Now, at the same time, that could be reason for Trump wanting to withhold them too. Having your name in these files associated with this vile criminal, a pedophile, and likely intelligence operative that was engaging in blackmail to get out to the public, especially under his presidency. That could be a reason, but it's not reason on the surface to, go crazy about the fact that his name would be in the files. Of course his name would be in the files. He was the president of the United States when the investigation began, beyond being Epstein's friend. So I know this is going to be red meat for people to talk about that. I remain agnostic about his involvement. I'm open to the possibility. You guys know me. I have no reason to defend Trump. I don't in like 95% of my videos. You guys know that, but that's what I think. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below, though.
is true, but it could be a motive for the 180. It could be that he just doesn't even want his name out there in the files within the context. So again, this report is just breaking, so we don't know too many details, but I do think it would have been incumbent upon the administration to at least inform us that back in back in May, the DOJ told them that Trump's name was mentioned, right? Because you're just allowing people to maybe arrive at the false conclusions by holding that close to your chest and instead playing the game of gaslighting. Everybody just needs better PR, I think is what we're getting at here. PR is failing, okay? It's just the strategies here of just gaslighting and lying and thinking that the public is not going to see past it. Maybe that worked in the old world. This is the new world, and it's not working anymore. So let's switch it up, guys.
Yeah, she's right about the new independent media. We're not living in the same universe. And she's right. They went straight into Operation Gaslighting, and their PR default is always just withhold information. Withhold information, spin it, concoct your own conspiracy about how this is some Democratic hoax after it was your side bringing this up, rightfully so, when the Biden administration wouldn't touch it, when Democrats wouldn't touch it, except for a very select few people like Ron Wyden. So look, I think the best thing to do is support Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey's plan in Congress to unveil the Epstein files, force the hand of the administration. You can see scoundrels like Mike Johnson are trying to get ahead of that and trying to say, oh, hey, we want to be as transparent as possible. We're going to release, victims or lists of victims or something like that. Again, these are red herrings designed to throw you off of what we're actually looking for. We're looking for information related to Epstein, his associates, his connections to intelligence officials, what we know that's more concrete than the information publicly out there that I talk about, that Candace talks about, etc. It doesn't seem to be happening. I don't think it's going to come from this. And yeah, she's right about their lack of forthcoming. I don't think we could have expected that after we saw that facade happen back in February, I think, when Bondi handed out those binders full of documents that had already been disclosed. So we're in a holding pattern here. Trump's being evasive. I'm totally with Candace about his name being in the files, being a possible motivation as to why he doesn't release the files, but it doesn't answer whether he's personally implicated or not. I've said it before in other videos. I personally think he's behaving in a way that he could be implicated, but he would be acting in the same way if he's trying to protect other people that are close to him too. I don't think we necessarily can default to knowing that he was involved in any wrongdoing related to this. And again, I'm open to it. I want to see more information. It's part of the reason why I want to see the files. I'm not one of those people that only if it's a Democratic administration, I want these files released and, redacted to protect the Democrats, or I'm only wanting these files to be released under a Republican administration, but redacting Republican names. I just want the files. I just want the information. The victims deserve better. The victims are essentially being forgotten, swept under the rug, pretend they just don't exist, and they'll never get justice as long as we don't get answers here. And why the blackmail was transpiring. Why the intelligence connections were so concrete, albeit circumstantial, adding up on mountains of circumstantial evidence showing that the most plausible explanation was Epstein was a Mossad asset. Most likely. Maybe CIA asset. Maybe he was a free agent like Robert Maxwell and was an asset of various different intelligence services throughout the world. We'll never know until we get answers, but I do thank Candace Owens for talking about this and trying to get to the bottom of this, and I think having the right attitude toward it. She's been pretty critical of Trump when it comes to this and Trump's involvement in the cover-up. And I haven't seen that from, liberal politicians when, say, Biden was engaging in scandalous activity, like, say, imposing vaccine mandates for all of us or trying to do that before the court struck us down. So you see major right-wing influencers having a problem with how this is handled. Alex Jones, Candace Owens, even Matt Walsh, Tucker Carlson. This is serious, and I do think it's going to hurt Trump if the populace and his supporters doesn't get something palpable that they can use to kind of satiate and justify their willingness to have this information placed out there for all of us to see in a transparent world where we actually get answers from government for once. But that's where we're at. So let me know in the comments below. Do you agree with Candace and I about this? Do you think that Trump is involved in wrongdoing regarding Epstein? What do you think the reason is that they're spinning it in this way? Let me know down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Candace too. Props to her for covering this story as always. And please consider becoming a YouTube member if you click the join button below. I'll give you access to all of my videos in advance of them going live on YouTube and would appreciate the support. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.